Hey folks, welcome to the Unsung Podcast. I'm Mark, that is
Chris.
Hey Chris.
You still don't know that?
Because your name isn't your real name on Facebook.
Yeah.
I always forget.
So Mark, we've got some really nice merchandise.
Oh, do we have some really nice merchandise? Yes, we do.
This podcast has nice merchandise.
And colour pink.
And yet, it's not all sold out. Asterisk, it can't actually get sold out because it's made to demand. But go with me in this, right?
Yeah.
It's a pitch. Yeah, it's not sold out. Imagine someone's listening to this right now and they haven't even gone and looked. Imagine that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they have to buy some, but come on.
Go and have a look.
Just have a wee look in my bag.
I know. Some nice t-shirts, some nice hoodies, some other ephemera.
Ephemera.
It's all great. Paraphernalia. Should we go with paraphernalia instead? Ephemera, paraphernalia. I don't know. Yeah, some nice hoodies.
Gadgets.
I really need to get myself a pink hoodie.
Do you?
Yeah, the yellow one is sick.
The yellow one turned up in Australia.
It did.
It sent a photo of it this week.
Well, it's winter at the moment.
Yeah,
so it was really, really sorely needed by our man down south.
Yeah, we are doing the podcast equivalent of a guy showing you the watches hanging in the inside of his jacket right now. But please go to unsungpod.net
/merch. Yeah, unsungpod.net/merch.
That is how you speak these days. So yeah, go there and just
get your fucking merchandise.
Just have a wee look. Nobody's telling you to dip into your pocket, pal. Just go and have a wee look. Just see how you feel. Browse it. Try it on.
Yeah.
Try it on. Oh, that looks really good on you. That's really. Oh, that mug. That brings out the red in your eyes.
Yeah, please go check it out. We've been really poor at promoting this, but
we've been really poor in general, and
we're failing as people.
And part of that is because we're not very good at selling ourselves. We're really not very good at selling ourselves. It's something that we're reminded about constantly. I quite like your podcast. Why do you not like publicise it better? Why does nobody buy your stuff? I don't know.
A lot of people listen to it, they just don't buy our shit.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah, and it's probably you, listener. Probably you.
It's likely. It is likely you.
It's statistically very probable.
Not that we're telling you to go buy stuff, but you're likely part of the problem.
Not that we're saying buy something now or get off my lawn, but buy something now or get off my lawn. Anyway, you join us halfway through the One Album Wonder mixtape. Last week, we went through the first of 3 categories. The premise being these are bands that only released one album in their lifetime. Now, they may have compilations and live records and stuff, but we're talking about one studio album. Okay, dipping back into our list, category 2, the bands who were really just sort of side projects or collaborations, ergo maybe more than one album wasn't likely. I've got a few of these. Mad Villain with Mad Villainy.
The rest is empty with no brain, but the clever nerd, the best MC with no chain you ever heard. Take it from the Tech 9 holder. David don't know they next shine from Shinola. Everything that glitter ain't fish.
MF Doom's got quite a few of them, to be fair.
Yeah, he's one of those folk, a bit like Patton, who was prone to a wee collab.
Yeah, he loved a collab, didn't he, really? He did The Mask and the Mouse, the Danger Mouse and Danger Doom record.
As good as a nod to a blind horse, of course his technique was from a divine source. Never knew the price of ice or what swine cost. One guy tried to bite the heat, it's when he discovered the other white meat. Oh, the one they hate so well.
Which is a really good album, a really fun record. Keys to the Cuffs is JJ Doom with Gennaro Jarrell.
Learned from a pro as a mentor. Started with a bird nest and burnt it to a cinder. Gotta get the party kicking. Plus your little charred body smelted like chicken. As the dollar continues to lose momentum, you need land for murdered Indians to represent them. Gold is up.
Neruvian Doom by Bishop Nehru.
Right between the eyeballs, anybody can get it, so don't be surprised, y'all. More dumber than a clown with a gun. Pound the drum to the sound of the sun.
If you saying that I ain't nice, you better think twice. I've been in my room psych with the mic, giving advice, plans and giving my life.
He's really a fan of that kind of thing. But Mad Villain, we've done a whole episode on Mad Villain. Won't stick on that for too long. It's a fucking brilliant record. And both Madlib and MF Doom at the peak of their power. The thing I like about a good hip hop collab is usually if they get together at the right moment in their career, then it usually is magic, and that record is magic.
Cool. We've mentioned Temple of the Dog, them Crooked Vultures.
Think you got me confused.
Yeah.
The eponymous album.
Yes. Why though, right? You ask yourself why.
Why it's only one album?
Why did they do it? Like, what's the point?
I think it's a great album.
It's a good record, but like they didn't need to.
No, I mean, I suppose this actually does fit. I mean, I'm saying why did they not do more? Because I think it actually was a remarkably successful collaboration. But it's fucking John Paul Jones and Dave Grohl. They're too fucking busy. Like, it's very unlikely they would have the time to do another record. I get that, and all of their individual projects are probably worth more money than putting their time into this one. But I actually think them Crooked Vultures turned out some of the highlights of all of their careers. I don't give a fuck about Led Zeppelin, so for me it's probably the best stuff that John Paul Jones did, and Dave Grohl hadn't sounded that good in many a year.
It's calling me, racing along these arteries in love. There's just enough to hurt us over the cliff.
And I think some of the best tracks on them Crooked Vultures are right up there with the best stuff by Queens of Stone Age. So yeah, it's really good.
You could also chalk Probot into that as well. The other Dave Grohl led project, which is just a revolving door of celebrity musicians coming in and out and doing bits and pieces.
Yep.
Some fun tracks. The one with Lemmy on it, I can't remember the name of it. It's basically a Motorhead track with Dave Grohl playing drums. It's fucking brilliant.
Got to roll and bones, do everything they say. If you're cool and you're the fool, make me work every day. Run out, do it quick.
Another one, a pretty obscure one, Hey Tonal, with the album Hey Tonal, Hey with an exclamation mark, Tonal. This is kind of headed by a guy called Mitch Cheney. He was in the band Sweep the Leg Johnny, a really good band. Originally it was a concept called Drummers' Perspectives that came through Cheney's work in film and television. He began to swap out MIDI drum samples for guitar and dulcimer sounds. He was taking drum MIDI notation and replacing it with musical instruments. I guess it's like a bit of an inversion of like melody drive the rhythm and stuff like that. But basically the whole project started to grow arms and legs, and he was swapping these MIDI files remotely with different musicians. And so there's a lot of contributions from people from bands like Joan of Arc, Dead Rider, Maps and Atlases and stuff. And the tracks were all built up with different personnel and recorded remotely. It's actually, it's something that Tool did with Melvins on the Crybaby, where they sort of sent the files remotely and didn't really know what they were going to get back. And that's kind of how these songs snowballed, just firing these MIDI files around and seeing what different people brought to the party. It's quite an interesting project. I don't think any of it's amazing, but certainly the concept is very novel, and it does have some good moments. The Good, the Bad and the Queen, with the album The Good, the Bad and the Queen.
If you're leaving, can you please say goodbye? And if you are leaving, can you leave your number? I'll pack my keys and get in the cab and wave you goodbye. I drive in the early hours.
Damon Albarn and Paul Simonon from The Clash.
Never heard it.
Yeah, I remember it was fucking all over the NME, predictably, at the time, and then just sort of sank. I don't know quite why the project ran out of steam, or if it was always just intended to be a side thing. Blind Faith by Blind Faith, 1969. We're talking Clapton again.
Well, I'm maybe I just ain't got the time, and I'm wasted and I can't find my way.
It's famous cover of like a young naked girl with red hair and she's holding a plane in the cover. You'll have seen it about. It's Clapton with Steve Winwood, and then also eventually joined by Ginger Baker. Clapton eventually dissolved the project because it was getting too close to being another Cream, apparently.
I'd like to add in Heaven and Hell here.
It's
Heaven and Hell, it's a Black Sabbath album with Ronnie James Dio on it.
Uh-huh.
And then in 2010 or 2009, I think the record came out, decided to get together basically who was Black Sabbath at the time, which is Tony Iommi. Tony Iommi, yep.
And Geezer
Butler, yeah. Just gonna say Gerard Butler. Yeah, so basically all got together with Ronnie James Dio to do an album and a tour, and the album's called The Devil You Know. I think Black Sabbath were back to being a going concern. If not, there was definitely some kind of legal shit going on with the name.
Yeah. There's always legal shit going on.
That was like a one-off thing. I think it was maybe Ronnie James Dio's second last ever recorded record. I think he maybe had another one after that before he died.
Atoms for Peace, a mock.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are they? What do they count as? I could never tell with Tom York's sort of side things. You know, he's got like, was Atoms for Peace meant to be like the same as Tom York or The Razor? Or
I think at the time in
names
the press,
just kept changing.
Was he not just saying that it was basically that was the name for? I think that was the name for his backing band, and then he decided to make it an actual band. And I think that's what happened.
Did we cover this in our Razor episode? I think we maybe did.
I don't know.
We did an episode on the Eraser.
Yeah.
Go and listen to it. We should. And then I think the last one I've got here is Celan, Celan.
We don't spend any time
They had an album called Halo, and it's Chris from Unsane and a guy called Ari Myers of Einsterzinde Nobalten. It's a collaboration and it's fucking great. Really good. I was sent it when I was writing for a magazine years ago, and I gave it a really glowing review because it's got all that crunch of Unsane, some really good riffs, but then it's got really weird electronic passages that bring something really different to the precedings. It's a really fruitful collaboration, I think.
Yeah.
And worth checking out.
You want to hit us with another record, Chris?
Yeah, I think I will. Am I going to go first this time?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do Midnight Masses and the album Depatures from 2014. Now, I've got the record, actually, the vinyl sitting over there. I had never heard of this band, and I went to a record shop one day with, 25 quid in my pocket, determined to buy something, and lo and behold, this album pops up as I'm flicking through, and it's got a sticker on it that has, here's who's in this band, and I was like, fucking hell, that's some good people in that band, and I just bought it on spec, and it turns out that it's not a brilliant album, but
it's really not. It has really
some,
boring.
But it has some really good moments on it. So just to backtrack a bit, it's co-founded by Jason Reese and also has regular contributions by Conrad Keeley, both from And You Will Know Us by The Trail of Dead. It also, the group featured Gerard Smith and Jaleel Bunton of TV on the Radio. Gerard Smith's death in 2011 nearly led to the end of the project, apparently. At one point, the band featured 14 members in one sense or another. This record came about 5 years after the precursor EP, which was called Rapture Ready, I Gazed at the Body. The project's kind of headed by somebody called Autry Fulbright, who does the vast majority of the vocals here. Autry Fulbright came from a religious family, and the album is really preoccupied with that and his father's early death. His dad was a preacher, and funnily enough, Jason Reese from Trail of Dead, his dad was also I don't know if he's a preacher, some sort of minister. So that's a kind of recurring theme in the project, and reviews are all sort of along similar lines, that the album is sonically diverse to the point of being pretty erratic. Incoherent, yeah. As I say, it's not an amazing album, but it does have some great moments. The main issue for me is that the band seem to have so many ideas, and that's perhaps a result of having so many fucking members and influences, that they never settle into any sort of vibe. It almost sounds like a good compilation by a label that has a loose remit, more than it does an album by a sort of particular band.
It's so incoherent to the point where a lot of it just becomes beige, and that's a shame, because there are good ideas on it, and there are a couple of good songs on it.
Yeah, it mentally makes you jump from different places, and you never get into a flow with it. And there's bands that have varied albums, but they manage to have a thread of consistency in it. With this album, it sort of pulls you out of it too often, that you end up missing a track because you've just get swept up in a krautrock song, and then the next one's this kind of weird funky thing, and you're like, I'm not ready for that yet. To just skim over some of the more interesting moments on it, Golden Age, the first track.
From a certain place in time, how I longed for the lighthouse where I left you as I sailed through the dark night.
It's very cool, very chill, self-assured indie song. A little bit beige, but well done. I think the second one's great, Am I Nomad?
Almost gothic.
It's a very unusual song. It's got a semi-frantic kind of flurry of very reverby energy. I think the reverb is something that makes it quite gothic. It wears its Trail of Dead drum frenzy stuff on its sleeve. You know how Trail of Dead do these really frantic drum parts that probably shouldn't work, but do. This really does that as well. But that's all couched in this much dreamier production, though, and I think the TV and the radio aspect is kind of prominent in that production. I think this song in particular has a much stronger, more yearning melody to it than a lot of the stuff around it. There's a hint of angst that runs through the instrumentation, and the fact that the choruses straighten out. Allows you to really get into them, you know. It lets the listener focus on the melody for a while instead of the energy of the stuff around it. Weirdly, the third track after it, All Goes Black, very different song.
Quite melancholic. It's not overdone though.
It's not overdone. It gets a lot of attention in the reviews. I was reading through various reactions to this, and that one's one that gets picked out. It does also remind me of that tendency that Trail of Dead had to kind of sling in a sort of waltz beat shanty with abandon. It's a good song. Does it feel like an intruder? I mean, in hindsight, it seemed like more of an intruder than it actually does when you're listening to the record.
Yeah.
But it's still quite distinct. I think the fifth track in it, Depatures, is sort of like a krautrock version of Pink Floyd. It's got some really retro synth lines on it that work quite well. A real lowlight for me is Clap Your Hands, the sixth track.
I was born to make a choice. I was born to
this weird inner city funk thing.
It's quite upbeat given the subject matter of the record.
Yeah,
you know?
it jars to me. It's got a Bruno Mars fucking quality.
It's like the fucking Doobie Brothers almost. Yeah.
The only other highlight I would really give them some credit for is the 11th track, There Goes Our Man. As a closer, it's pretty strong.
Spoke by my father. He said that these 5 points could come together in a way that they really never come apart.
It kind of feels a bit like a more gospel-laden Fleet Foxes or something. It's bigger, it's a bit more romantic, and it's sort of true to that preacher theme that runs through it, you know. Yeah, but there's a lot of incongruous stuff as well.
Yes.
No, I'm being unfair actually. The track Everywhere Is Nowhere is probably about as noi as a non-noi band can be. It sounds like something that Noi would have put out, and it's good, but again, it just doesn't really feel like it fits. So ultimately, the whole thing's just a bit scattered, and it's not crazily scattered. I mean, it's not fucking madcap like a concept piece. I think in my memory it seemed a bit worse than it was actually on closer examination, but the consistency in mood or sound even, or the underlying quality of the songwriting isn't what it could be. That said, I think there's enough excellent moments to suggest it's a band that could have gone on to maybe establish a more consistent sound and potentially turn out something pretty special. And it does also feel like one of those albums that, see, when we're analysing a band's back catalogue and you refer back to an album that's patchy as fuck but had some highlights on it that gave you a hint that they had greatness. I get the feeling this could have been one of those albums where they went on and did a great record, and then you looked back to this album and were like, oh yeah, look, there's the signs of their great ideas. But as it stands, this is their only album, so we don't have that. Maybe they've got another one in them, but I think it's unlikely at this point, especially with such a big group of musicians involved.
I agree, yeah. I found it really difficult to hook onto it as a result, because it just kept pulling me right and left. And
it's interesting though, as a curio, the people that are assembled on it, I just bought it on the merits of that wee sticker, by the way. Proves that those stickers fucking work. And I don't regret buying it. I mean, I've actually, the tracks on it that are good, I have given heavy plays. Like, I do really like them, but it's annoying having to go up and change a vinyl.
Yeah.
Skip the bad tunes, you know.
Yeah, that's not what vinyl was made for. It was made for the considered listening experience. Yeah. What am I going to go for next? I'm going to end on a bang, so I'm going to go with Nailbomb next.
Are you going to end on a bang, so you're going to go with Nail? Fucking hell, okay.
Yeah. The reason I'm going to end the bang is because the last record that I picked, after listening to it, I realised how much I adore it.
Oh wow.
And I really wish that we did a whole episode on it. But
I don't think there's much more banging than Nailbomb.
Yeah, but we've got one more after this, so.
Okay.
This is a great record, right?
Point Blank, 1994.
1994. This is Max Cavalera and the guy from Fudge Tunnel, Alex Newport.
Alex Newport of Fudge Tunnel, yeah. I really like Fudge Tunnel, yeah.
I haven't really heard them, to be honest, mate, so I couldn't really tell you what they sound like. Is it recommended then?
Aye, they've got a really good cover of Cream's Sunshine of Your Love as well.
But this was a one album, one gig project, really.
2 gigs.
Two gigs.
They managed 2 gigs,
they did a warm-up gig, then the actual gig, and then
they did a warm-up show. Was it June 95? They did a warm-up show. 2 days later, they played at Dynamo with all sorts of famous folk as well on stage, and then disbanded. And then that performance was immortalised in a live album called Proud to Commit Commercial Suicide. It's like a concept project.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know why it didn't continue, why it didn't work out. Weird though, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I mean, in 2017, Soulfly toured this album. Soulfly were playing it. I think they had Max's son, Igor Jr. On guitar, and Alex Newport wasn't involved in that at the time. So there's loads of really interesting trivia. I mean, Dino Cazares played in the record, and so did Igor Cavalera. When they played that festival, they had a bunch of live guests. Christian, what is it, Wolbers? Wolbers.
He was in Fear Factory.
Fear Factory, yeah. Evan Seinfeld for Biohazard. Dave Edwardson of Neurosis, and one of the guys at Dead Kennedys, the one that's got the initials, who I can never remember. The record itself, so it's thrashy and kind of chunky hardcore, but it has a really strong industrial quality to it.
And a lot of groove as well.
Yeah, it does. It's got a bit of groove metal to it. I think the recording and the sonics make it sound a bit like Prong or Killing Joke, kind of later Killing Joke with the industrial feel. A lot of that's probably to do with the guitar tones and some of the effects that are used. I think the drums triggered, because I mean otherwise there's some seriously fucking processed tones.
I think they're really processed, because I've noted that in places they actually do sound fake, but they also sound played like triggered drums. Like it sounds like
could be a dynamic trigger though. You know, you can get decent kits. But
back
then
in
again,
1994 though.
Yeah, I suppose it's decent as a record. I can imagine it's really nostalgic for a lot of people. You know, and I think you're right. It does sound like it merits being a proper project. It's a good one, but I get the feeling as well that a large part of this album's appeal is down to the fact of how it happened. Yeah, the recording itself, it's pretty erratic, man. Like some of the tunes sound really squashed and industrial, and others sound really dynamic and really punky. I mean, I picked a few out. Wasting Away, the first one.
A great riff, a real thrash riff. That I love that. It's got a pure Slayer solo as well.
Do you know that was in the movie To Die For?
Was it?
Yeah, the film with Nicole Kidman. So there's a scene where Joaquin Phoenix is holding a ghetto blaster and he's sat on a wall next to Casey Affleck, both really young, and they're dressed in some sort of like Lost Boys punk appropriation outfit as a new teacher Nicole Kidman walks by and their jaws drop open, and it's also the track Entering is immediately preceded by a weird little monologue by Joaquin Phoenix about how he feels the need to jack off anytime it snows. I think it was directed by Gus Van Sant, so I suppose he made that call, including the track on the soundtrack.
I never really gave a rat's ass about the weather until I got to know Miss Amaretto. Now I take it very serious. If it rains, or there's lightning or thunder, or if it snows, I have to jack off. Oh, right. Sorry.
The third one, 24 Hour Bullshit, I think that's a pretty impressive and meaty cut in this.
It is a really good mix between thrash and industrial, I think.
And it's really bombastic. Big impact song.
I like the trade-off between Max and Alex's voice as well. Max handling choruses. It's cool. One thing I really like about Sepultura, and I like about Max Cavalera, and obviously all of Max's projects have it, but because he's Brazilian, right, just the way he says English words is sometimes just great. You know what I mean? I think if you listen to a lot of the stuff he does, it's the way he says 24 Hour Bullshit, it sounds like a demon saying it, you know? It's pretty cool.
Sometimes I think they sound like Arnie.
Yeah, totally.
Track 5, Blind and Lost. It's one of the
screamer, man.
It's one of the punkier tracks here. Totally different feel to it. Like it's like a really well captured demo or pre-production or rehearsal tape even. It's like there's something very live about that one. Track 8, man, for fuck's sake. G.G. Allen samples from a talk show
So
just
good.
before he died, man. And I guess the polar opposite, I think, of track 5, track 9, World of Shit. It's just like a chunky grid-like format, much closer to Ministry or Prong, including the use of vocal samples. It leaves their punk and thrash comparisons pretty far behind. It also sounds very 80s in its production, you know, which is odd because it's 1994 and there were definitely better sounding records within the reach of the people that are involved in
It's
this.
on Roadrunner Records, which
That's a budget.
is, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
that's, even in the early 90s, that's a budget, you know.
Yeah, so I'm surprised. Like, it honestly sounds like it could have come out 10 years prior to when it did. And that's odd. I don't know if that's maybe also part of why the project didn't persevere. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
It's a cool record though. I can really understand how people would be really attached to it because of that, you know,
Yeah.
special one-off, fucking almost like art project concept vibe to it.
I liked early Sepultura, and I hadn't revisited this for a long time, and it hasn't quite as held up as it did in my memory, to be honest. The highlights you picked were the ones that I picked out, but I also quite liked Village's Cancer. Even though it's a typical anti-religion metal bollocks that a lot of these fucking bands do, man.
The track listing in this album is like a pure teenage diary, innit?
Totally, man, yeah. But this is when the drums sound really triggered, and it's a really nice feel alongside that sort of thrash. And Sick Life actually sounds like a Pantera song. It's got southern fried riffs. I like that too, but yeah, it's a bit all over the place in a good way. It feels organically all over the place. Like they're just chucking, like, we've got all these fucking ideas, man, and we need to do something with them. They don't really quite fit in our other bands. What the fuck are we going to do? We just do this record and see what happens, you know? And
Yeah, it turned out no bad.
it did. It turned out it's not as good as I remember it being. I'll be honest. But when it hits, man, I think it's up there with some of the best stuff that Sepultura certainly ever did, riff wise, in that era.
Yeah. Okay, back to our list and the short final category, which was the category of people that sort of changed their name either after an album or for a particular album. So we'll start with a band called Tarantula AD and an album called Book of Sand. So this band only had 2 other EPs, and I remember seeing them around about 2005 at Nice and Sleazy in Glasgow, and it was fucking heaving, and I did not know why everybody was there. To be honest, I don't even know why I was there. Like, it was one of those gigs where you ended up at it because everybody was just sort of like, where are you going tonight? Oh, I'm going to this show. Where are you going tonight? Oh, I'm going to this show. Why are we going to that show? Because he's going to this show. Everybody's talking about this show, and you just ended up at this fucking show watching this mad band with like fucking distorted cellos and shit. They were a really interesting project, but totally off the wall. And for the life of me, I have no idea why so many people knew about this fucking gig. It's not like there was some super cool person in the band.
Yeah.
Anyway, after this record, they changed their name to Priestbird, which is a fucking terrible name.
Yeah.
And they continued for 2 more albums, but I never really heard from them again. The band Viet Cong, and the mini-album Viet Cong 2015. Became a band called Preoccupations, which is also a fucking terrible name.
Do you know what's quite interesting, right? It's a wee side. This is going to take you off your stride a wee bit here, but I need to fucking shove it in, shoehorn it in somehow.
You cram it in.
Did you read the review on the Skinny for the Midnight Masses record?
No.
So do you know what review is right underneath it?
Is it Viet Cong? There you go.
Which were published
which was
more
by
than a year apart.
Which was by me.
Yeah, by you, but were published. I don't know why they're together on the same page, because like they were literally published a year apart. I don't fucking understand why that is there.
Pretty creepy,
but that is really weird.
That is weird, man. Yeah, so I reviewed this album and I really liked this album. And what?
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
I know. I did that. It's in print. But controversially, I didn't rip them to shreds for their name, but the band ripped themselves to shreds. It was around about that time when band names were a seriously fucking hot topic, and people were just changing them right, left, and centre. Viet Cong. Yeah, I mean, they decided to change their name. I get that it's slightly provocative, but I kind of thought that was the point. But yeah, so they became Preoccupations, and it's a fucking awful name. Tetra Splendor, and that's a wee indie band from down south. I think they're actually Welsh. They had an album called Splendid Animation. I've mentioned it on the show before because I think it showed amazing potential. All these other interesting ingredients, like bits of Radiohead and even bits of like almost like Cave In and stuff like that on it. Loads of Beatles on it.
Help me, Johnny B. You're the only cat with Mr. Fishy. Can you give us all a guarantee? Lost your thought in the
But they then changed their name to People in Planes, and they got very slick very quickly. They made a real grab for sort of mainstream success, and I think they just lost it. Despite it being the same band that I'd really enjoyed prior, something just shifted. And I think something shifted in their ambition, and the name change in that band was to do with the change in ambition, maybe. And the drum, Diskin. Which we did an entire episode about. So the drum stand out here because they were already called China Drum, and then after 2 records changed to the drum and then changed back to China Drum for this very different sounding record. And I still quite like that as a move, and I really, really like that record.
I want to just say that we will get to that.
We've got an interview.
Yeah, we will get to talking to people in this band about this record.
I just
need
totally.
to fucking remember. I need to just remember to do it. I will get on it.
It's in the post.
I apologise, boys.
So, the only other 2 things I made a note of were, first of all, just for a bit of a laugh, new metal bands that only released 1 album, because fucking hell, man, that was such a
tasty period, man.
Such a flash in the pan phenomenon.
Tasty period, yeah.
I've got a wee list. Now, I'm only going to cut in 2 samples of these, right, Mark?
Why?
But you are going to get to pick the 2. So I'll read out the list.
Okay. Is Dry Kill Logic one of them?
No, it's not. Atom Ship, The Dead Lights, Down the Sun.
It's Down the Sun, that's one of them.
Dragpipe, Factory 81, Flybanger, Lollipop Lust Kill, No One, Pulse Ultra. That's like a strong lager.
This is like a fucking energy drink.
Sinistar, Stepa, Twisted Method, Union Underground.
Violates such a simple plan. To be honest, a dead man. Yeah, I want it, I need it to make a man. Yeah, I love it, a fucking rock star. Yeah, I want it, I need it to.
And Psychedelic.
Psychedelic. I think they're still going, mate.
So how do you pick just 2 from that one?
Down the Sun,
list?
definitely, and the Union Underground. Both are dreadful bands, and I remember both those bands.
So they're the ones you want?
They're the ones that I want.
You don't want Flybanger?
Sad mistakes along the way.
You don't
sound
want-
like. I don't think he's funny.
You don't want Lollipop Lust Kill.
Put in 4. Put in 4, mate.
Lollipop Lust Kill, man.
I can see him behind your eyes. You don't want me, you don't need me, you're just living to deceive me. What do you want me to be?
Do you know what you should do, right? If you can do it, this is like if Chris can't do it, hopefully somebody who's listening can do it. Psychedelic were in a BBC documentary.
Are they?
Yeah, the singer, I think one of the guys in the band.
About Doctor Who?
No, about music in Scotland and new metal scene in Scotland, I think. It might be on YouTube, it might not be, but they were in it and they ended up getting a wee bit of quote unquote fame as a result of it. If anybody can, I think the guitar player who's quite prominent in it maybe went on to form another band afterwards, who I think became Cerebral Bore. I think the guitar,
very good band.
I think the guitar player ended up going on to form that band. I don't know if he's in the band or doing music anymore.
Psychedelic led to Cerebral Bore.
I think the guitar player from Psychedelic
Fuck, man, that's a phoenix for the flames.
ended up forming Cerebral Bore, yeah.
A band, by the way, that I have advocated for in terms of the fact that the Scottish hip alternative press wouldn't give them a fucking mention, even when they were hugely rated around the world as a metal band. You're going to do. Okay, and just a final little thing here for food for thought. Bands you wish had left it at one record. Burning Airlines. Mission Control, the first album, an absolutely fucking stellar album, and they followed it with Identikit, which is pish. Headswim's Flood.
I always knew as I was faking. For me, I'm so insecure. Teach me, I'm not into love. Scrub me, yes, I'm so unclean.
Which you won't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but trust me, mate, it's in the post. The Icarus Line's Mono.
Yeah.
Fucking tremendous record,
That's a great
and
record.
nothing they did after it really did it for me. Polisa. And the album Give You the Ghost. It's maybe something we'll cover one day, but I am so reluctant to cover any of our other stuff because it's fucking shocking. But the first album's good. And we already mentioned them, Death From Above, and also they should just have fucking shut up.
Yeah,
they should have put out the first
stopped
album,
existing.
yeah, and then just
Vanish.
fucking shut it.
Yeah.
Go and open a fucking hardware store somewhere remote in the Rockies. That brings us to our last choices. Mark, this time you're first.
Yeah, so non-profits, Hope.
Most likely I've been there and done that, and if you're lucky enough, I come back from hell again. A sack of skeleton, corroded bones in a saggy bag of flesh and skin. A head of medicine, hands of labor pains. A sexy grin on the man with the face that's
Non-profits,
Yeah.
as in PROPHETS.
Yes.
Hope. 2003.
2003. This is Sage Francis, this is Joe Beats, and this is G. McKillick.
It's a blast from the past as well. Sage Francis, early days of
Yeah.
Unsung. Was it episode 20 or something like that?
I almost picked this record for that episode. Like I said earlier on, it's one of my favourite albums of all time.
Wow. You know that Joe Beats Wiki says he is best known as producer for Non-Profits.
Yeah, he vanished after this record. I don't know why. DJ McKillick, I don't know if that was a real person or just Joe Beats or Sage Francis just doing turntables or a pal. I don't know if that was a real person or not. But yeah, Joe Beats, he'd been producing a few things, but this was I think this was his first actual album he produced maybe. He'd done the odd track. And the whole point of this project was Sage Francis and Joe Beats doing a 1990s hip hop record.
breaker 19. I'm in outer space with a microphone. Clean me up
it sounds like it. It
Yeah,
sounds
so
like a
they're
high quality.
Going for the retro thing, yeah.
Sounds like a high quality 1990s hip hop record. So it's really difficult to describe. And people who like hip hop from this era, which is early 2000s, will probably know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of records from that era, particularly indie hip hop, underground hip hop, which have this really weird kind of almost lo-fi sound, but not quite. It's like they're using like really cheap DAWs, you know what I mean? And they're not not doing mastering properly or something like that. You know what I mean? It feels a little bit underproduced, but it's kind
Don't
of part
cut
of
the
charm.
corners in your mastering, kids.
Yeah, don't do that.
Get that budget in thirds.
I've learned that.
Recording, production, and mastering.
Mm-hmm. But I first heard the record we did for Sage Francis, which was A Healthy Distrust, was the first thing I heard by him. And then the next record I heard was this one. And then I went back to Personal Journalist, which was the record that came out just before this.
I know I was supposed to change the world and all. Looks like the world got to me first. If you can't beat them, join them. Hurt the team by beating yourself. I'm different, in a different way. The only thing that stays the same is change. While people claim their states, I state my claim. Sage Francis made a name for himself. For the record, my mother calls me Paul.
It was his first proper solo record. He'd done a bunch of mixtapes before that. This is just Sage Francis at the peak of his powers. He just won a lot of battle rap awards and all that, the Scribble Jam. So he'd become really quite well known for being a good battle rapper. That fire and that power is totally unleashed in this record. Mm-hmm. It's also Sage Francis playing a bit of a character a lot of the time, and there is actually a character on this record called Saul Zahn, who he does revisit throughout his career, who's like the biggest fucking sleaziest creep in the world. And there's a song in this called Saul Zahn's Heart, which has got some of the most outrageous fucking lyrics, but it is brilliant. Respect the Broccoli Cock, it's a really funny one. But
Broccoli Cock?
Yeah, he's a really weird guy, Saul Zahn, you know. But My Heart Is Beating Your Face, I think, is the hook in that song. Yeah, it's fun. It's a funny song. And this record really plays into that kind of De La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest, jazzy, soul-y kind of hip-hop vibe, not the gangster rap kind of stuff that was going on, with the more kind of abrasive production.
Wasting away at your job. That ain't right. While you're fronting on my squad. That ain't right. And you're always acting hard.
You can hear it in some of the percussion as well.
Yeah, totally.
It's,
you know,
it's a lot of groove.
A lot of groove, a lot of really nicely chosen samples. For me, there's only one bad song on the record. It's just banger after banger after banger. Some of the wordplay on it is brilliant. It's Sage Francis working in a way that he hasn't really worked in since. He's trying to have fun with it and be less serious, and he's quite a serious rapper, really.
Can I ask which is the bad song?
Bad song? Mainstream 307, maybe?
The thoughts of the backwards cash in on lucrative talents. They used to give balance when you had to live with two abusive parents. Waste away, create expenses for yourself. I know you're sensitive, but the negative effects ever felt day to day. Wedged in between your weekly paychecks. Remember when you were...
And maybe Spaceman as well.
Interesting.
Two songs that I didn't think were... that would probably take off the record.
So, see, I noticed in the wiki entry it calls this the first album by... Which kind of is interesting because it sort of suggests that it's still a going concern.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're obviously very effusive about it. Pitchfork gave us a 9.2. That is fucking high for a Pitchfork rating.
That's obscene.
They called it a highly valued reminder of the need for traditionalism in modern music. This album stands strong as one of the year's finest. Complex, which is a publication from New York, placed it 28th in the 30 best underground hip-hop records of all time, and Paste had it in the top 12 of hip-hop records that deserve more attention. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, it's hip-hop, right? What the fuck do I know? I'm kind of out of my wheelhouse here. Am I imagining things? To me, it sounds quite white. There's something about it. Feels white. I thought the third track, Damage, which was a single, was a really interesting one. It's got a Tetris sample in it. Sings about Fugazi and Minor Threat. There's a Cold Chamber reference in it. One, nothing wrong with me. Two, nothing wrong with me. And also the chorus in it, Damage, I think it's a John Spencer's Blues Explosion reference. Damage! song Damage by John Spencer.
He still plays that live. Whenever he plays it live, the place goes off.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant live, man. It's really, really good. He's actually playing his first UK shows in a long time in September in London and Manchester.
Wonder if you'll try and go to them.
I'm going to try and go to the Manchester one because he stopped touring. He stopped really. He was just running Strange Famous. It's actually quite interesting. He makes the Fugazi
His label.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's really interesting. He makes the Fugazi Minor Threat reference because Strange Famous is a DIY label. It's very much of the punk ethos, you know.
It put out Joe Beats though, didn't it?
Did it? I think Strange Famous came around after this record.
I'm sure there was some connection there though.
But no, that's probably one of my favourite songs on the record and one of my favourite songs of his, period.
Yeah. I think the fifth one, Disasters, was an interesting one as well, sonically especially, and in terms of arrangement.
You need to shut your kids the fuck up. Word up. Trying to get some writing done on this motherfucker. Check it out. Perhaps when I have one of my own, I'll sing a new tune. But this song is called Disasters. It's about your 2-year-olds. I sing for a living in funeral homes. I don't take.
It's quite uneasy and weird, and it deliberately breaks up its own flow. Doesn't allow itself to get too steady.
Wipe your eye, baby. I may have busted off a couple times inside, but that ain't my baby. Kicking on original flavors, dumb-ish, like Jay-Z trying to impress Chip Fu with a tongue twist. I diggity done this, I diggity done that. I kickity kept the style in my arsenal, thinking that it will come back now.
He's obviously playing like a bit of a character in that, and some of the lines are really, really funny when he's talking about kids. And it's interesting, man, because he was saying in interviews and stuff for years and years and years he was never going to have kids, and now he has 3. One which he has with his wife, and then 2 which he's a stepdad of, you know. It's just funny how things change, you know. I like that song. It's got the toy gun samples. It's a clever record, this. It riffs on the 90s very well. It adds in a lot of originality with samples like that and like Tetris and stuff like that. The turntable is really, really good. It calls out fucking Rick Rubin. It's got a direct reference to the Beastie Boys and I Don't Buy Chiba or Moet. It's got that easy 90s flow and a hook, which is pretty much De La Soul all over. You know, that NONPROPTHTS thing. That's like a total thing. Zolzan's Heart is probably one of my favourite songs as well. Zolzan is just like the world's worst guy.
Looking at my broccoli, it's about that time. Polishing the nasty cauliflower patches till they shine. So rocks. Try to have phone sex when you call the cops. The holes are too small, got these huge bald spots on top of my head, emerging like unwanted.
The beat is so playful, his flow is really braggadocious, it's very in your face, very confrontational. Says Francis is sending messages and rapping about like fragile and toxic masculinity before anybody was really talking about that, particularly in hip hop. The bit about how I will remove the cross that dangles in the cleavage of every Christian chick who thinks her tits are saving Jesus. Just a really funny line. A song full of really funny lines. Half shark, alligator, half man, half amazing. It's a total reference to Nas. It's really, really good. New World Order.
DJs, they ain't got no style. DJs ain't got no style. Your girl, she ain't got no style. Your girl ain't got no style. Internet gross exaggerations of the truth is often stranger than the fiction novel I dare think.
Some really complex wordplay in that. He often will do things where he'll tie together common phrases. So there's a line, Wanted Dead or Alive from New York, it's Saturday Night Fever running high. And obviously he's referencing Wanted Dead or Alive, it's live from New York, it's Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, it's like dominoes, isn't it?
Yeah, and he does this song is full of that stuff. Tolerance level.
First started a flow, making this music, wrecking shop like a retarded vocational student. Didn't know it at the time that the shit made me look stupid, rocking pro-black rhymes. Oh, but the devil made me do it. I never gave 2 shits about rocking new kicks. I ain't the type to wear something just cause the shoe fits. I make moves quick.
Talks about the emo rap shit at the start, which Sage Francis, when he first came out with his first album, was called emo rap. So it's like a kind of takedown of that. And then the next song, The Cure, is an emo song basically. It's like all about how much he loves this woman. And it's like a really nicely considered song with some of my favourite lyrics that Sage Francis has ever written.
Don't deny that sick feeling in your stomach. You can't run from it. Let it guide you into high view, then move beyond the summit. From peaks to valleys, speed through alleys. If it's done quick, you'll have the time to find the caves where days were never sunlit. Discover scriptures made by a society of blind men.
Really nice couplets and some really clever imagery, you know. I just love this album, man. I just adore this record.
Yeah.
My notes are an episode's worth of notes for this record. Like
I got that vibe.
And I had that feeling inside when I listened to it for the first time. He's like, man, it still gets me, you know. And that's a record I heard probably 15 years ago, and it's special when that happens. If you like hip hop, you'll love this record. If you like 90s hip hop, you'll find a lot to love here. It does sound a bit white, but I think that's part of the charm. I like that people like Sage Francis and B. Dolan and all that, they do sound white, because why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's true.
Anyway, you probably didn't like it so much, so
I feel underqualified to critique it, to be honest. Yeah. It's going back to that YouTube beer channel analogy. I'm like, it's beer in it. It's pretty much my muchness.
I thought you would quite dig it though, because it feels a bit more unusual.
It's alright. You've played hip hop stuff that I like more. Over to me.
Over to you for the final one.
My final gambit here is Handsome.
Handsome
by Handsome.
By Handsome.
Formed in 1995, had 2 non-album singles that year, then 2 singles in 97 plus this album. I think his name's Peter Mengid, I think. Mengidi. He was kicked out of Helmet in 1993 by Page Hamilton and formed a band with a focus on songwriting being a shared duty and experience. Probably tells you what it was like to be in Helmet with Page. Supposedly the name comes from the Tar album of the same name. They wanted to push back against macho names in the scene at the time, like Sick of It All and Biohazard and stuff like that. Amazingly, they originally toured with an early Deftones, so that's back in 1995, before recording this album with Terry Date, who recorded Deftones, but obviously also recorded Pantera, Soundgarden, Prong, Slipknot. After the release, they toured with Silverchair and, get this, Less Than Jake in the USA, and they toured with, get this, Wu-Tang Clan and the Voodoo Glow Skulls.
Holy fuck.
In Europe.
Fire in the dance hall! Fire in the dance hall!
Nobody knew what the fuck to do with this band. I mean, when you hear this, they toured with Wu-Tang Clan, Less Than Jake and the Voodoo Glow Skulls.
It doesn't make any sense, man. There's so many other bands from that era they could have easily have toured with.
Yeah. I mean, Silverchair makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's fine. Somebody was paying attention, right? But anyway, they played the Warped Tour and then disbanded, citing internal tensions, probably because they were like, what the fuck? How did we end up in a Wu-Tang Clan tour?
How did we end up in Warped Tour?
They had been working on new stuff, but were able to leave their contract with Epic due to a technicality, really, because one of their members quit, and that kind of got them out of the contract. Jeremy Chatelain joined Jets to Brazil.
So I got stoned till I thought this house a home. When I came down, I found myself alone.
Oh, okay.
And then went on to actually play with Helmet in one of the later incarnations. Eddie Nappy, the bassist, played with the Mark Lanigan Band. Kerrang placed this album as one of the 12 most underrated albums in the 1990s in a poll. It sounds to me almost exactly like a mix of Far and the band Curb Dog. The Irish band
That's
Curb Dog.
interesting. I really thought it felt like, probably because of the members, like Helmet playing Quicksand.
Well, that is a very, very frequent reference I make later on as well. At one point, I would say Far and Curb Dog, somewhere in there was my sweet spot for sure. I liked chunkier stuff than a lot of emo, but not as boring and monotone as a lot of the post-hardcore stuff, like maybe Snapcase. Snapcase were a cool band. I liked them for about 5 minutes, but then I was like, that's enough. I
Song Coalesce is a screamer.
So yeah, I'd classed them a lot with like Aftertaste era Helmet and Manic Compression era Quicksand. The more melodic side of it. It is heavy, but it's very cleanly produced, which gives it a sort of pop clarity despite all the riffs. And it also has a strangely post-punk shoegazy quality to it. I think it's to do with the guitars sometimes, maybe the process, and then it reminds me of things like Band of Susans. It felt to me like that band had real ambition. The songs are quite bold and it sometimes very anthemic, like they're really reaching for a sort of memorable sing-along quality. In terms of just skimming through some of the tracks, the second one, Ride Down, I think is one of the best examples of what I'm describing, with some really quite quasi-romantic vocal melodies and a nice double-timed pre-chorus where it feels like it speeds up without the BPM changing. Track 3, Going to Panic, has that perfect Helmet meets Quicksand blend. You know, there's some listeners to this podcast that will definitely be a chef's kiss moment. It's also got a nice switch of tempo for each chorus that kind of kicks the riff onwards. The fifth track, Thrown Away, is a real highlight for me. Proper post-hardcore angular verse that resolves with quite an anthemic chorus.
Yeah.
That track, I think, definitely had arena potential as far as sing-alongs go. The high melody that's in it, and I can't tell if it's either a really affected guitar or a synth, is a really nice touch as well to break up that sort of rectangular riffery that's going on, the stodginess. That tune's a total head bobber. The sixth one, Dim the Lights, was always my favourite back in the day.
I like that song a lot, man.
Yeah, it really hits the ground running. Direct, it's meat and potatoes, kind of grungy post-hardcore. The only thing is I think it maybe hasn't aged all that well. It feels a little bit too obvious now.
I think a lot of this album does very much feel of its time, and when it hits it feels like it's really good of its time, and sometimes when it doesn't it feels as though
it's
a bit flabby.
Bit flabby, aye, that's probably the word. Aye. The seventh track, Lead Bellied,
heaviest riff in the album.
Heaviest riff.
Yeah, love that song.
Yeah, it goes really deep into the sort of Betty aftertaste Helmet territory. Yeah. With those staccato dropout riffs, you know, those ones that let the drums sort of skate across the gaps in the guitar. The only thing with that song is it lacks a chorus to go with the riffing.
Yeah,
you know,
it's true.
The eighth track, My Mind's Eye. That one has always summoned to me thoughts of like Simple Minds and some of this sort of bigger 80s stuff, maybe Killing Joke in some ways too.
The riff is Kashmir by Led Zeppelin.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right, so it's got that swirly, chorusy guitar effect, and it makes it feel quite 80s to me. I mean, Simple Minds, for example, were not the pop band that everybody associates with Simple Minds. I mean, their early stuff is very post-punk and quite noisy. That tune is a sludgy, soaring pop thing, is weird and counterintuitive, but I think it's one of the hookiest moments. It is safe to say that this album's too long, and
it falls off after that.
Yeah, especially around about that point, absolutely just sags. It should be winding up there. I think maybe actually the 10th track, Quiet Liar, that would have been a good point, maybe. It's a very post-teen emo track, you know, and everything but the haircuts. And it is a bit cringy, I guess, in hindsight, but it would have been totally acceptable as a closer, I think, on any band's debut album.
It's definitely 10 minutes too long, at least, this record.
Yeah, and that's it. And it came from an era, you know, 95. We've spoken about this before, when more was more. People were paying for CDs and they wanted a 50-odd minute plus album, whereas, especially because the songs are quite similar and it's quite stodgy, it's quite a lot of potatoes to eat, you know. Totally. I like potatoes, but there's too many potatoes.
There's a limit of potatoes.
Yeah, there's a limit of potatoes, and I think that's not really something that had been perfected.
Yeah, Breviate wasn't a thing for particularly major label acts in the 90s.
That said, though, you listen to that album, you listen to that band, and again, it's got that quality of, I could imagine it being the previous album to an album that we were doing an episode on, where you're like, oh, and if you go back to this one, you can hear the good moments starting to arrive, and then they get the formula, and, you know, the album's shorter and there's better choruses. They just never did that. The band sort of dissolved. And when you look at that touring schedule and stuff as well, like fucking Wu-Tang Clan and Less Than Jake, imagine going around the States with Less Than Jake, and imagine going around Europe with Wu-Tang Clan. Even though, don't want to like look a gift horse in the mouth, those are amazing tours, but what the fuck is that audience going to think? What is a Wu-Tang audience going to think of Handsome? Who books that? Who honestly thinks that's doing the band a massive favour? Because it's exhausting. You know, it's going to like create that tension within them. You know, how much merch are they going to sell? It's really odd, and you wonder why they gave up. Well, you know, even though they got into a major, I don't think it necessarily sounds like it did them any favours.
It feels as though they could have done a little bit more time in development of their sound as well. You know, it does seem to come out of nowhere because they'd had pedigree. Yeah, it's a shame. I think you're probably right. It would have been a band that would have probably gone on to create a really great record. You know, maybe the next album, maybe the album after that. Yeah. You know, I think maybe by the 2000s they might have actually hit the formula on the head. You know, what can you do?
What did you think of it overall? All right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the songs that you picked out and the ones that I picked out are definitely the highlights. It's definitely far too long. And when I seen it was when I knew it was a 90s album because you've spoken about it before. But when I seen the length of it, I was like, straight away, I was like, before listening to it, I was like, this album's going to be too long. It's going to have some really shoddy moments. Then, if you look at the play counts on Spotify, the last few songs tail off quite substantially.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny as well because it's not one of those ones where the bad songs are sort of scattered around the middle. Like, it really is like they've put the best 6 songs in the first sort of 8, and then after that they're just like, right, stick us on. It just sort of seems like an afterthought.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, even though I do feel as though it's obviously era, like it still feels a bit fresh as well. You know, because there's some ideas in it which are still being used today.
Yeah, there's nice ideas in it, and that post-punky guitar thing and stuff, the 80s quality to it was different for bands like Helmet and stuff. So, but there you go. Aye.
That's that then.
One album wonders. If you are listening to this and screaming at us because we've not mentioned your favourite one album wonder, then hit us up.
Let us know, we'll do another one.
Yeah, post on whatever social media you care to use, send us an email, or write it on a rock, throw it through our window, or even better, pay £4 a month to listen to this podcast, which we put a lot of work into,
and tell us how shit we are to our face.
Get access to our AAA pass, and then you will be guaranteed an answer, and it'll be grovelling because you're paying for it.
Yeah, that's what
therefore
you're paying for.
Deserve that.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want for £4 a month.
Within reason. As long as it's worth
not within reason. Out with reason.
Out with reason. Next week,
Hot Snakes in memory of
Vero
Rick Froberg,
back.
the late Rick Froberg. Get some fucking Rick Froberg in your ears this week. The man didn't do any bad records, not that I'm aware of anyway, and he has some absolute belters, and 2 of them in particular are getting focused on, although I'm sure a lot more will get passing references next week. So join us for that. Thanks for listening. Yeah, take care.
Bye.